Let's fucking go. Hello and welcome to the Pose Factory. I'm super excited you're here. If you don't know me yet, this is the first course with me. My name. Hello and welcome in to the Pose Factory. I'm super excited to share this with you, and I want to explain a little bit about what the Pose Factory is as we dive in. It's going to be helpful for you to understand the system behind everything that we are going to be learning. Okay, so the Pose Factory first is a subsystem based on hey. Hello and welcome into the Pose Factory. I'm super excited that you're here and I can't wait to share this with you. So let's go over what is the Pose Factory and how is it created and how it's going to support you in your practice and building an understanding of all the different postures within the context of yoga. So first thing you should know is that the Pose Factory is a subsystem of an immersion that I created called the Elements of Mastery. Elements of Mastery is also a subsystem of Chromatic Yoga, the umbrella, the educational system that I've created. So Elements of Mastery includes 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and space, and it assesses postures and movements based on those elements and also helps us to relate our yoga practice physically back to our daily life and our behaviors and our thought process. This is not necessarily the Elements of Mastery, but it is a subsystem because I use the Pose Factory as a way to support people that are taking the Elements of Mastery. I'm also using the Pose Factory in teacher trainings and all different types of learning environments to help anyone who is practicing yoga. So this subsystem is based on the 5 elements. However, you don't necessarily need to know the 5 elements in order to make use of this. But I will start off giving you a little bit of insight so you know how everything is kind of created, and I think that will benefit you as we go along. So we have the 4 pillars of a masterful posture, which is basically what we're talking about when we talk about the Pose Factory, building a masterful posture from the ground up. Well, what starts a pose? We have intent. When we think about it, when we're doing a posture, we're doing it because we have some desire to do the pose. Maybe it's the desire to create. Maybe it's the desire to feel better. Maybe it's the desire to experience something deep within. So there's always some kind of urge, pull, desire, motivation, or inspiration that is involved in creating a posture first. And that's what leads us to creation in general. So there's this pulling before any action has taken place. Now, when we talk about a physical posture, the next in line is, well, we need a structure, which includes alignment, foundation. It's basically, how is this shape taken? So first we have an intent that pulls us into a pose, and then we have the structure of the pose, right? This pose right here is different than this pose, and each posture has a structure to it. Now, when we talk about alignment, I don't utilize a dogmatic set of alignments, though in this training I am going to give you my opinions, but they are just opinions which should be taken with a grain of salt, meaning you should really try them out and work with them, and of course listen to the why behind I have those opinions. And then as you practice, you can make decisions for yourself based on your personal experience, and then your opinions also matter as you have experienced each thing. So the structure or the alignment is based on the intent. If we don't have an intent, then we can't necessarily have a set alignment. So for example, when people are giving alignment cues like knee over the ankle or shoulders away from the ears or shoulders towards the ears, all these are based on some kind of intent, but often we don't know what that intention is as a practitioner. So as yoga teachers and or practitioners, whichever you are, or if you are both, of course, if you're an instructor, then you are also a practitioner, I hope. But as yoga instructors and practitioners, we should really try to align our intent and our alignment so that we are choosing alignments based on what the intention is. For example, if you have an intent to heal an injury, your postural alignment might differ greatly than if your intent is to express yourself creatively, right? There might be more freedom or more available movements to if you're just trying to express yourself. But if you've got an injury, you might have certain limitations you have to adhere to. Okay, so we have an intent, we have the structure, which includes alignment and foundation, and then we have effort, which is the actions or muscle engagements. It's our participation, it's our presence in the pose, meaning we are not just letting the pose happen to us, we are creating the experience through our muscle engagement. So we're going to go over how effort within the structure or the alignment that we choose can shift our experience. And lastly, we have expression. So expression goes under this whole category of creativity, identity, artistry, our freedom to celebrate, love, joy. It's all of the, it's what we get out of all of this. And it also gives us a bit of play with once we have the structure set and we've chosen our muscle engagements and we do certain things, then we don't just have to stop there. Each one of us has the ability to go further, and there's a lot to play with in each pose that doesn't have to necessarily do with the necessary alignment. For example, in a posture like Warrior Two, well, generally we have the legs out like this and the arms out like this, but we could take a extension of the wrist or flexion of the wrist, or we can externally rotate the arms. We take cactus shape. You could turn your head to the front. You could turn your head to the back, to the side. All of it would be regarded as a Warrior Two shape, right? That would be the pose. But there's a lot of freedom within that, especially if you allow yourself to take it. And that's really, that's about the self-expressive piece of the puzzle. And, what in my personal experience of teaching yoga, I found people kind of fall on one end or the other of structure versus expression. And a lot of people try to avoid effort altogether, just try to do the minimum, which can be okay. We want to know that, effort is necessary. It's part of participation in our human experience. Just being attentive and awake, or deciding to breathe a certain way, or to focus your eyes in a certain way, that's all effort. That's energy that is chosen. It's not doesn't just happen all the time. So expression, some people are more on the expressive side of things, where everything's creative and they don't really care about the structure or what the alignment is that the posture is in. They're just doing whatever they want, and that's okay. And also on the other side, there's some people that are just rigid in their structure. And there's a right way, there's a wrong way, there's no freedom to play within that structure. So there can be, I think we can utilize this as vices, meaning like we really just kind of apply our same way of living into this system, and we don't utilize it to liberate us and free us from our confines of our perception and our kind of view of life. Or we can utilize it and say like, well, how, what am I missing? Am I more on the structured side? Am I more on the effort, like over efforting, like I'm addicted to effort? Or am I maybe not really utilizing effort, or I'm avoiding effort perhaps? Or am I in the, maybe avoidance, I should say. In expression, am I expressing myself, or am I just only focusing on the structure? So you can utilize this as a system of self-reflection is what I'm getting at. And sometimes we don't even know what the intent is. Why are we here? Why are we doing a yoga practice today? Why are we doing a posture? And sometimes a teacher might provide us with a intent and give us some little context for why we're practicing what we're practicing today. But ultimately, everyone shows up to practice yoga with some kind of urge, some sort of pull, some desire inside of them that's wanting to create, wanting to get into the body, be present, right? So acknowledging that can be super important and can really help the rest of this, because if you have a really strong urge and you know what that is, you might put a lot more effort into your practice, knowing, if your urge is to heal, and that certain types of engagement, muscle engagement, can really create healing in a certain muscle, then you might put more effort into that engagement. Okay, so now let's just, before we move forward, I just want to explain that each of these have elemental qualities. You don't have to really know this for yourself, but some of you might want to understand the system, okay? So the system of intent really is based on water. That element is synonymous with the second chakra, and water is the element of desire, okay? So it's self-gratification. It's kind of this, the pull towards self-expression. It's not necessarily the expression itself. That's more in the space quality, which would be, I think, let me get to that in a second. So structure is earth. I think that's pretty easy for most of us, but it also deals with space. When we think about space, the structure, if I lean this way in space, it's going to change my balance, and the alignment and everything is different, where my bones might be in a straight line or the joints might be a certain way, but essentially this leaning is different. So space has to do with where we are in space, and of course moving within space. All of this is about structure, alignment. That's kind of earth and space. Structure, I think it comes pretty easily. Alignment, foundation, how you touch the earth, how you're connecting to the ground. This also has to do, there's some gravity that is important in here. We'll go over that as we go. Effort, of course, the element of fire. That's the motivation, inspiration side of you, that kind of intensity that is within all of us that says, I can do it, and actually takes the action. So that's the element of fire. And then expression is air and space. So expression includes like freedom, joy, love, like because you're in the pose because you love it and you're getting the love back, or, because you're doing the posture, you're feeling a sense of joy, or the postures can be really freeing mentally and emotionally as well. And that's why air is part of this. And space has to do with these elements as well. So balance within space, but also sound and vibration. So when we look at the upper chakras, we have the throat chakra, which has to do with sound, and that's where we get to speak, the right to be heard, the right to hear the truth. This is all the throat chakra, and that's dealing with self-expression. Like water is the desire to self-express and create with creativity, but the actual expression comes in the space element, which I correlate with sound and vibration. Some of this is a little bit of my interpretation of the chakras. This in particular, my kind of viewpoint on what space includes. Whereas in the chakra system, just so I'm clear, the element of space is not necessarily there. It just goes from air, which is heart, to sound, okay? And then thought and divine wisdom, knowledge. So we're including in space the upper three chakras, okay? Ether, space, those are terms that are interchangeable. Okay, so this is how this system is built, and how it's going to work for you is in each posture, we're going to really assess, and we might, look at intent throughout the practice as we go, but really it's these three that this particular training is focused on. What is the structure of the pose? Meaning, what's the alignment? What's the foundation? What's touching the ground? How are we going to activate our muscles? Effort. How are we going to activate our muscles either to keep the structure or to uphold it? And then maybe our effort is based on intent, because sometimes we need to activate muscles in order to keep an alignment or in the foundation, but sometimes we activate our muscles for a different desire, because there are muscle engagements that are beyond just the necessity to create a certain alignment. Muscle engagement can be for a different purpose. For example, you want to, you recognize the gravitational pull is moving you downward, so you squeeze in to rise upward. That's an example. Or perhaps you've got a certain injury and you want to engage, again, the intent is I want to heal the injury, so maybe you want to engage in a certain way to heal or to protect from injury, right? So effort, well, what's the structure? What's the alignment? What's the muscle engagements we can do? And then what is the available expressions that we can take? Now, I'm not going to necessarily talk a tremendous amount about your, personal exploration and improvisation, but I do encourage you throughout this to check in and say, is there a way I can express myself? And what would, if I just allowed myself to take form based on my deep desire here, what would this shape look like? How would it change? And what is my, allowing the body to guide you is a little bit of intuition in that too, right? So, which is also up in this the upper chakras in the space element. So while I might give you some examples and ways to express yourself, or ways you can change, alter a shape, like, you know, we did this kind of thing with our arms and neck changements. I can give you some options, but really when it comes to this expression, that's more of improvisational and something that can be felt, and, you know, create the space for yourself, give yourself permission to explore, and that's where your expression really comes out. And, you know, really all of this is just to say, you know, when we talk about structure and effort, there are a handful of ways that we can really align and call it a certain shape. And there's a bunch of ways we can express ourselves within that structure. And that's what this is all about, is finding structure and expression within that. And a large deal of what I'm going to provide for you is the structure and effort section within the Pose Factory. So without further ado, let's move on. I'm going to share a little bit more about each of these as it applies to what we're going to be doing next, and also we're going to get into the foundational actions, including how to place your hands, or different ways you can place your hands on the ground, and how to place your feet, and different ways you can engage muscles of the feet. And then once we have our different options for foundations, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about core, and we're going to move on from there and get into each posture. I'll see you on the next video.